Hello and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. This is episode 54. Lolies, insert
Clean the floor.
obligatory clean the floor.
Yeah. 54, clean the floor. Everybody do the dinosaur.
Better option.
Yeah, I also, because I edited episode 53, I'm also aware that somebody didn't bother looking up what the bingo call was for 53 last week.
We did look it up.
Look, I'm away for 1 week and
Go on then, tell me. What is
We
it?
did look it up. It was do a P, we said.
No,
it was-
stuck in
yeah,
the
it was.
tree. It's stuck in the tree.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I tried to see if there was an explanation, but it's literally just because they rhyme, so there is no explanation.
yeah, that's we have a very special guest, although you
show
probably
am I
can tell
on?
from the topics of discussion so far. We're delighted to be joined by Colin Cummings.
Hello,
Thanks for joining us,
that's
Colin.
me. Thank you for having me. It is wonderful to be here.
So for folks who maybe have come across some of your games before, or
Mhm.
maybe haven't come across some of your games, do you mind giving us a brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Of course, I should explain why I'm here in the first place. Who is this gentleman and why is he on this podcast? I make tabletop games, for people who don't know. I made Boy Problems, which is probably my most well-known one, the Carly Rae Jepsen inspired cyberpunk heist RPG. I also made Blackheart, which is a Carly Rae Jepsen inspired cultist horror RPG. There is also In Case of an Emergency, which is a Control SCP-themed workplace nightmare escape game RPG. Struggling to explain that one. And then there's Tales End, which is a solo journaling and party game rules light RPG. Those are my games. Yay! And I'm working on
Amazing.
more. Many more.
And for folks who want a taste of it, we've actually played Boy Problems on the channel before. We played it for EGX Resd, I think it was last year.
3 separate characters, all named Carly Rae Jepsen or some variation of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
I've never
It
It
seen
was
Matt.
wonderful.
I've never seen Matt quite so excited.
Yeah, I mean, it was ticking all my boxes. It's got Carly Rae Jepsen. It's tabletop RPG. Like, let's ride.
It was an amazing. I watched it. I was wowed and astounded by your antics and your managing to squeeze Carly Rae Jepsen into every nook and cranny of that, more than even I did, which was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Um,
just remembering back to all the different Carly Rae Jepsen characters, and oh my god, that was another time, wasn't it?
It was
Like,
another
It
It was
was,
another
yeah.
time.
a whole millennia ago when we played Boy Problems.
Basically, yeah, a whole lifetime ago. Feels
Uh,
like.
and the lesser important folks on the podcast, of course, there's me.
lesser important. That's a nice way of
Look,
putting
we've
that.
got a guest. Like we're here all the time. We're old hat by this point. I'm Matt Jarvis. I'm the editor-in-chief of Dicebreaker. I'm joined by Will, head of video for Dicebreaker,
Hello, thanks for having me.
and Alex Elodie's video producer for Dicebreaker.
Didn't I not already get introduced when I did the bingo call? Hi
I
again.
think I just throw over to you for the bingo call.
Okay, cool. Hi.
We've got a format and we stick to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously,
And that
Don't
format
show
has
off
no
script.
format.
podcast. And Alex, me, and staff writer. Hello.
Yeah, I'm the piece of chewing gum stuck under the table at this point of this podcast. I'm just hanging around whether you want me there or not. So
You know when someone gets out of a leather chair and you can see the imprint of them in the texture?
yeah, you're gonna have to do more than scrape me off this. I'm hanging on.
Me and his butt print. That's what she is. In the chair of this
The foundation of the podcast.
Exactly.
That's a nicer-
Yeah,
Yeah,
This
that's a much
podcast is
nicer way
built
of
on that
saying
butt
that.
print.
Yeah.
There's history in that butt crack.
Butt print, not butt crack.
Oh my lord. Matt,
I
quick.
feel like, I obviously don't need to introduce what we're doing here, but I will. So, just for the sake of formalities, we're here to talk about tabletop RPGs and board games and stuff. Obviously, from
To
that.
be
will
fair, I
happen
was
at
just
some
going to
point,
say,
yeah.
I don't think it was very obvious.
And as always, we kick off with what folks have been playing, and I'm going to throw over to our guest Colin. Colin, what have you been playing recently?
Oh, nothing. to disappoint everyone.
News.
I'm mostly in design mode at the moment. I have the Boy Problems expansion comes out on May 8th, which I announced yesterday. So I have been in full design mode. And by full design mode, I mean procrastinating mostly until I do everything last minute, which is how most of my games are created. Spoiler alert.
Now, is it true for designers as it is? Because, like, journalists, you tell people, I write about board games, and they're like, oh, you play them all the time then? Is it the same for designers in that you spend more time, writing and thinking about them than you actually do playing them?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I look at a lot of them. I like to buy them and go, oh, look at this. That was a good idea. I don't actually play them. I just look at them and read them. They're really good books, really.
Well, yeah, there's a big discussion around, like, is reading an RPG book the same as playing it? Because a lot of people think, yeah, like, if you read through the rules, like, you kind of are playing the game sort of thing and getting to know it,
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of different ways you can experience RPGs, especially tabletop games. And, getting a group together, we're lucky that we're a bunch of adults who've managed to get together, and talk about board games. But it's hard to get your friends together to play board games, let alone talk about them. So it can be, it's nice to just look through RPGs. Like I'm sure there's people like me too who just love a good layout and love looking at art. Like I love a good tabletop book, like a coffee table book, where I'm like, look at that, this is great. I have one next to me that I flipped through. It's the art book for Control, and it's so beautiful. Yes. It has like a wonderful layout. I'm just like, ooh, look at this, guys. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, but look at the layout. It's great.
Of course, you can find a list of beautiful RPGs here on Dicebreaker. YouTube.com/Dicebreaker.
Knew he'd do that. Get that in.
That video did not get enough love.
That was a great video. That was a video targeted towards me.
All right, excellent. Is there anything that's been catching your eye in terms of just... again, I feel it's that classic thing of there are so many RPGs that at some point you just find yourself going, oh, I would love to play this in the future, and the future is always the future, and it just like always sticks around. But it's, like you say, just nice having a book to look at and go, that seems really cool. I can't wait to play that.
Matt, the future is always the future, just to quickly say.
Told him.
It's too early to talk about the flow of time for me. Let me finish my coffee. I'm really excited. I backed Wander Home, and that the physical copy should be somewhere in the mail, possibly. I haven't really looked at the shipping notification on it, but I'm very excited to dig into that. It looks like a very beautiful RPG, and I love the little forest creatures going on adventures. It's such a wonderful team who did that too. The one I gaze at lovingly is Lancer. I always look at Lancer as my like dream to play, but who am I gonna wrangle to play Lancer? I'm like, okay guys, there's a 400-page book. It's about mechs, and they're out at 400-page book.
I'm gonna put down a hex map.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Yeah, wait, no, why are you leaving? So that's my dream at some point. But that's why I make the RPGs I do, because I'm like, I can't get someone to play the 400-page one. So I'm like, here, it's a 4-page one. You can get in 20 minutes. Low barrier. Come play RPGs with me.
Yeah, Lancer is... that's definitely in that category of like, I own a copy and have looked at it multiple times, but then it's just like, I can't... Like, I've tried to pitch it to my friend group multiple times, and they're like, yeah, we like mechs, all of this kind of stuff, and then, like you say, it's just almost the idea of having to learn a whole new game that isn't just like 5 to 10 pages long is sometimes just overwhelming.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's a very Matt Jarvis game as well.
It really is.
Matt, you and I have a lot of overlapping interests.
Yeah. Colin, can you confirm when you're making a Carly Rae Jepsen mech game?
Oh, that's on my to-do list. Trust me.
All right. Wills, should we flick over to you?
Yes.
What have you been playing recently?
Well, we literally just played my favourite game of all time, Cyclades. My favourite board game. I'll let Loli's talk about that, though, because Loli's has got something very exciting to say about that. But apart from that, I have also I played some more Arkham Horror, and something horrible happened. Something absolutely horrible happened. So we moved on to the next scenario. We finished the train, so we're now on scenario 3 on the campaign we're doing. Where we've arrived at Dunwich, and basically I'm playing a character called Ashcan Pete, and he's a vagabond, he's a wanderer, but he has a dog called Duke, and he's an ally card that starts already in play. So it's really good, really, really good card, but obviously he's kind of rubbish without it. And this scenario is literally designed to get rid of your allies. It's to the point where there is a card that you can draw just called Kidnapped. And I was like, oh no. Like, I read the title of it. I was like, oh no, please. It's like, if you have an ally, put it in the potential sacrifices pile. And I was like, no, not my dog. It was horrible. And then we got annihilated. So now we have to start again. But yeah, that was harsh. But speaking of reading RPGs, I haven't played, but have been reading the rulebook to a game by, I think the name was Radman. They sent it to the Dicebreaker Twitter account. If you've got a cool RPG that you're working on, by the way, let us know. We've got a contact email, we've got DMs, all that kind of stuff. Let us know about your games you're making. But yeah, he sent us a copy of Hesitation at the Gates, which I'll quickly read out the blurb for because I feel like I'm not going to be able to describe it otherwise. It's an eclectic theme. So Hesitation at the Game is a game of chasing enlightenment. Your character will have goals, motivations, relationship. It's a tarot-based role-playing game with a trick-taking resolution system, which is really, really cool. So I was reading through the resolution stuff. So if anyone's played a trick-taking game, like Hearts or Trumps or whatever, it's a game in which one person plays a card of a suit, and then everybody else has to follow a suit. The person who played the best card in that suit wins. There's also a Trump suit, which has much better connotations than the modern variation of that word, but is basically like a suit that beats all other suits. And then if you don't have a card that matches that suit, you have to play like a burner card, which won't do anything for you. So you kind of like have a hand of cards as you're playing. And you're playing, so instead of doing like spades and clubs, because it's a tarot deck, you're doing swords, pentacles, cups, and wands, which is already quite thematic. But of course, in a tarot deck, you have the Arcana cards, right? So you've got like the Devil and the Wheel of Fortune and the Empire or whatever, or the Emperor. So each one of those, if you have it in your hand, you can play it as part of the resolution system, and then something cool happens. But because it's like a tarot deck, you have to look at like how does he describe it? It's almost like the court that card exists in. So like if you're doing something cool, but you play, the Wheel of Fortune card, that might be based on like something lucky happening or like something chanceful. So you have to then have the thing that you are doing to make things happen fit that kind of theme, which is kind of interesting. So it's like, yeah, it's a really like if you're a game designer, it's got loads of cool tech to think about and like think of the implications of, but it's all wrapped in like this really interesting like almost like 1800s maybe 1700s kind of like Catholicism kind of like mythos and stuff. It's full of
I'm taking notes off
angels.
camera.
It's all you're playing as like a heavenly order and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's really interesting. It's a really cool book. But that is on itch. It's radmad.itch.io/hesitation at the gate. So give that a look. But yeah, really interesting. That's
Nice.
what I've been doing this week.
Yes. Yeah, we were chatting about this the other day, Wills, because it feels like there's been kind of a recent trend of like RPGs powered by tarot decks.
Yeah.
Because there are like a number of RPGs that obviously use playing cards, obviously dice, but I don't know if it's just because I've noticed more of them. Like they've obviously always been around, but it feels like it's been
it's been a thing for a while. But I think the problem with tarot decks is they're a little bit more hard to get hold of than a playing card decks. They're a little bit less accessible. But once you have one, they're such a good game design tool because you get all of the power of playing cards, but you'll get all the theme of a tarot deck as well as all the Arcana cards to have like a really thematic. You look at them like, especially if you've got really interesting art on the deck that you're playing with, that immediately inspires you. And so like tarot cards are really, really cool to play RPGs with. Even if you're just like messing around as a person who reads tarot for your character kind of thing, they're a really, really fun tool to have.
I love the idea. Oh, sorry, Colin.
Oh,
Go
no.
ahead.
I was going to say, I have a quick cultural question, because I was thinking of a design tool the other day, and I realized you guys might not have had it or called it something different. When you were in like elementary school, did you have cootie catchers? The little like little origami like things that you fold and then you like fold up the
fortune
yeah.
tellers.
Yeah. I don't know what you called them. We called them cootie catchers, but I was
I think
like
they were like
that.
fortune tellers or something. Yeah.
Fortune tellers?
Yeah, they're
Okay,
from
yeah.
that you do this
Why were
and then
they
you
cootie-
Yeah.
unfold the
Yeah,
fire.
you
I
sound
just-
like they're cootie catchers.
I cannot explain.
You shoved them in
Cooties
someone's
wills.
mouth when they tried to kiss you or something.
I'm not sure. I don't know where the name came from, but we called
guess
them
they-
that.
They kind of had like a sort of who are you gonna go like what's your future?
Yeah,
gonna be?
that's
Who
what
you
Yeah.
gonna
it
be?
was. Yeah.
It's
It
like
was that-
that playground game of is it MASH or something? Where it's
Yes,
like-
I was just about to bring
Yeah.
up MASH
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, MASH was also MASH for you. It was like mansion, apartment, shack, and house, and then
Oh,
you
yes.
like.
Oh, wow, I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well,
Well,
look forward to my new RPG. That was.
Apparently, as well as being used to tell fortunes, the shapes were used as a pincer to play act catching insects such as lice, hence the cootie catcher name.
Oh.
Interesting. Whoa.
I thought it was along the line of ew cooties.
Everyone's webcams have just turned off for me, by the way. I've no idea why. I can't see any of your faces. It's very ominous.
Oh, no.
That happened to
wanna
me
fix that
before,
one,
and I
Liz?
just cracked on. So
Crack
on.
All right.
Okay.
We'll keep rolling. All right.
I was just gonna say I love the idea of using a trick taking, like you have a hand of cards, because then you're gonna have to choose when to use which cards.
Mm.
So like maybe use a better card earlier on, and but then sacrifice the potential of getting a better outcome later.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you have a bit. It's kind of like how Aegon works in that you kind of know what's coming before you decide what your character's doing, kind of thing. I really like it when systems give you like a sort of a platform for you to tell like what's going to come for your character, rather than the classic just sort of like I'm going to do this thing and then you roll a dice and then you like fall on your ass or whatever. You know, where it's more like, oh, I know that there's a big failure coming up, so I can make that more interesting. Sort of.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's
I'm
good.
intrigued by, speaking of card-driven RPG, I'm intrigued by Fiasco, the second edition of it, I think, because I really like original Fiasco, but it is very much kind of like a traditional-ish role-playing game. Although you do use cards to write different elements on and you have relationships with the other characters. But the second edition they put out comes with decks of cards and is more kind of card-focused, I think, to make it more accessible for folks. But cards are always interesting to me because I think sometimes they run the risk of, if you have a hand of cards, you're kind of limited to the cards in your hand, depending on the system.
That's life.
But like you say, there's
You
play
the
the cards
hand
you
you
dealt.
dealt. Yeah.
But I think there is something really nice in that it, for certain players or certain groups or certain systems, it does provide that structure in a little bit more of a formal way, I suppose, where it's like you're not just handed everything and told to, do with it what you will.
I really liked Wizards of the Coast when they did Gamma World and their cards in Gamma World, because all of the cards were loot and powers. So you started with a very simple blank character, and then everything just stacked up as you got more cards. And the powers might not make sense with your character, but you just kind of rolled with it, and then you just had these really weird characters with these really weird apocalypse inspired powers and items and things like that. And it was a nice way to formalize loot.
I love randomly generated characters, especially when they keep getting weirder as the game goes on. I love that stuff. Like when you pick up weird like traumas or things like that. I've been fascinated by I think is it Adam Vass or Adam Bell has been pushing a game at the moment called Scratch and Claw, which is, I think we've had an article about it on the site, but it's an RPG in which you buy a character card, but your character card is a scratch card. So it's kind of it's pre-generated for you, but it's randomized. So you scratch off your thing, and it's like you are a albatross. You have this weapon or whatever, it's really cool. But it's also it's kind of, it reminds me of Keyforge, but an RPG kind of thing where it's pre-randomly generated for you. It's really interesting.
It's a lovely day in the village, and you're a horrible albatross.
Alex Meehan, what have you been playing?
I've been.
Are you alright?
I've been playing Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Oh, there it is. So that or Scythe.
Yeah. Am I really so predictable? No, I've been writing a list about it actually recently, which is now live on the site. You can go and read that. Look, I'm grifting as well, Will. And I just fancied playing it because, you know, when you think about something and you write about something, sometimes you get an urge to just do the thing.
Absolutely.
And so last night, actually, which in the flow of time is a different moment, we played some Betrayal with some friends. I think some people hadn't played it before on TTS, brackets Spy Games.
Get the acronyms out. My God. You're such a
yeah.
pro gamer, man.
Yeah, pro gaming on Betrayal, one of the most trash games out there, yeah. Yeah, we played a game of Betrayal with Widow's Walk, which I'm pretty much doing every time I play Betrayal now. And yeah, it was interesting. We actually lasted quite a long time until the haunt happened. And then it did, and it happened to someone who perhaps really didn't want it to happen to them. And so they became traitor. And the traitor mechanics were alright. The haunt was definitely on the side of, this is okay. Like, Betrayal is definitely a game that lives and dies by the quality of its haunts. And I will be the first to say, it is a broken game. It does not work. Sometimes it can be awful. But I also really love it, just like anyone loves, like,
It's like Tapestry.
Exactly.
It's got its faults, but it's still a good game.
Oh.
She's
bringing that all
poking.
up, are we?
She's prodding the bee's nest. Bees don't live in a nest; they live in a hive. Yeah, this one was okay. It was like about someone who got possessed by a little girl, and they play tag, and then they're trying to find you. And the premise sounded like creepy and fun, but in the actual, you know, gameplay department, it was very much like, you go into this room, you roll some dice, you look for the thing, you hope that your stats aren't garbage, so you can do the thing, and then you run away. And it started out with the traitor being really underpowered, but it turns out once they actually manage to succeed against someone, that person is instantly turned traitor. So it's kind of like, it's a hard thing to do, but once you do it, you're just like, you're rolling. So we were very close to winning as the heroes, and then it all sort of tumbled down as everyone started becoming traitor, and then we lost. So my friend messaged me later going, is Betrayal always like that? And I'm like, almost always, yeah. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. Alex Lowleys. It's time to proclaim you, I believe, like,
Queen
victor
of Greece.
Yeah.
No, Matt, stop it. Shushi. No, stop. I want to talk about... I've been playing two things. I want to talk about the other one first. I've been playing...
We haven't really buried the lead on that one then, have we?
No, I played Micro Macro, but not... I just played a couple of the kind of different levels because I'm planning to play it on stream in a couple of weeks' time. So I didn't want to like spoiler too much of it, but I played a couple of I kind of just skipped a couple of scenarios on the way. And it was really fun, but also like I was kind of seeing what I think Wheels and Matt were saying before about how after a while it's like you kind of come across things you've already seen, and I don't know, it seemed like even at like 3 stars, I think as far as we got, maybe even 4 stars, they still seemed very simple. Yeah, and we're just I don't know. I like the premise, and I'm looking forward to doing a stream of it as well, because I'm gonna do the whole like coloring in as I find the little clues and everything. I think it'll be really nice and chill. But I can definitely see that that's a game that maybe I'd like to see more. I'd like them to see it stretched further maybe. I also think like 16 scenarios, I think, is what you get in it, is not a huge amount for when you consider how quickly each one plays.
Yeah.
But I like it still.
Have you been playing in the pro mode, out of interest?
What's the pro mode?
The pro mode is you only get the starting question, and then you have to work it out and then answer the questions, rather than like answer a question and go to the next one. That makes it a little bit more interesting, I think.
Okay.
So maybe try that. But
to be honest, we were kind of playing it like that anyway, because we would find a bit and then we'd follow it around for ages, and then we'd be like, oh yeah, what's the question again? And then we go back, and then all of a sudden we had answered like 3 questions at once because we were just like off on the trail. So we pretty much were playing it like that, but not on purpose, because we were just getting carried away with finding clues.
I think it definitely sometimes feels like one of those proofs of concept where it's like the concept is really strong. The whole like it's where's Wally, but also mystery, murder stuff, bad stuff happening, go solve it. But a lot of the time, it does kind of boil down to here's where the bad thing happened. Follow them back to their house.
Yeah.
Like find suspicious item on shelf.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of promise. Like I'd be really fascinated if they do like a follow up or a sequel. And it's nice they're putting out kind of, I guess, DLC. It's just on their website. You can go and find kind of mini mysteries, so you can squeeze a bit more out of that map. But yeah, it's kind of the thing where once you're done with it. And those cases are about 15 minutes long, maybe, tops.
Yeah.
But...
Speaking of DLC, by the way, after calling me and a pro gamer, I'm trying to think of, like, if you imagine a pro video gamer is, like, drinking Mountain Dew and they've got the Razer headset, you know, what's the visual for a pro board / tabletop
exactly
RPG gamer?
It's sleeved cards.
Glass.
A dice tower.
Fedora.
Fedora, yeah.
One of those really expensive tables that like are just
Yes,
like
like a
you like
world.
pull the map out at any time and like
Plaid shirt,
sure.
Plaid shirt for sure.
Metal coins. It's all the fancy stuff in it. Yeah.
Custom
You'll never be
miniatures.
one, Wheels. You'll never.
I know,
be one.
an entire room full of Kickstarter miniatures that they haven't painted.
Also, I mean, those fancy tables are often like that kind of velvet stuff, right? So you definitely wouldn't be able to be a pro gamer.
Oh no, it's
Wheels.
felt, isn't it?
Felt.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
felt.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I only put velvet on my table.
Nothing but silk for me.
Yeah, so anyway, Micro Macro was one. And, I mean, everyone's spoiled already, but I won a game of Cyclades.
Why sad? You usually love winning, Loli.
I love winning, but it's been spoiled by several people on this very
I didn't
podcast.
On this very podcast.
Yeah, we played it just before we started recording this podcast. We were playing with the PAX Oz lot.
We were playing with the designer of Pogs.
I was trying to say PAX Oz, but I was saying PAX Oz, I think. Anyway. Yeah, we were playing with them, and it was is it your favorite game or one of your favorite games?
My favorite, yeah, one of my favorite.
Wheels' favorite game. It was my first time playing, and on the very last turn, Wheels wasn't even in, like, as part of the winning
you
people.
should have lost to Alyssa, to be fair. Had Alyssa been paying attention.
There was 3 people who were close to winning. There was one who had been close to winning for a couple of turns, and I'd been like trying to get to her, and like Wheels was like, "Oh, if you do this, then you can stop her." But Wheels failed to see that because he was like, "Oh, if you do this, you stop her," and she did, and I could have like
my place to say.
I could have potentially finished. I could have potentially won earlier if you hadn't like given her the clue. But then she was building her second what they called Metropolis. And she was she had 3 islands, and one of them had already won. That's the one I was trying to get to the whole time. And then the other 2 options was one that was really far south, which I couldn't get to, and the other one which was just on like the island next to the current island she inhabits. And everyone who's playing, there was 5 of us playing except for me, failed to see that I had an island right next to that one, and there was a ship there, and all I had to do was send a troop over. So she put the Metropolis there, and so on my turn, I just sent my troop over and took it from her.
It was literally like in a cartoon where they leave a pie cooling on the window.
Loli's was the dog just like following the pie smell.
Yeah,
following
just
the smell.
floating, yeah.
The smell trail. Not snail trail, that's different.
So yeah, Alyssa,
Very different.
it was entirely Alyssa's game until I was such a meanie and just snatched it from her. Yeah.
Yeah, had Alyssa put that on a different island, she would have won, like without any competition.
So, Loli, are you telling me that you beat Wills at his own game?
I did.
I said before the stream, Alex Lolies says that she's never played someone before and then immediately wins. She's great.
Yeah.
She's great at board games.
2 for 2 in the Cyclades trilogy as well, right? Cyclades and Kemet.
Inish.
No, it's not Kemet. Sorry, Inish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kemet's what's left.
Well, the thing is, right, this is what I found quite interesting when we were playing that today, is in games like that, when it's all about like area control or like kind of fighting each other a lot of the time, my usual tactic is to be in people's faces and to like take everything they have, and I'm very military. Like when I
doesn't sound like you, Lola.
When I play Seven Wonders, I'm the same. I'm always on the military track. I just love being really like aggro and like just doing that stuff. It's not a surprise to anyone. But in this game, I think because there was already some people being aggro towards each other, I just kind of like very quietly worked in my little corner and just my own thing. And then at the very end, I tried to be aggro. I was trying to build myself up without anyone noticing, and then trying to take their things at the end, and it kind of worked out for me quite well. So I think that's something I need to keep in mind for future.
It was kind of like the two people who were leading, you and Alyssa, you were both kind of doing that, just like not getting involved, just like, just doing your own thing. And then Alyssa was going to win via philosophers, and then you ended up winning by military. So it's just two different versions of sitting in the corner waiting for that moment to strike.
Yeah, and it was the women who were on top as well for at the end.
Yeah.
What can I say? We're top conquerors, us women.
I feel like a lot of the time with those kind of games, like if you're winning at the start, you will not win the game. Like as soon as you make yourself a target, like that's it. Done.
Yeah, because I wanted to build a metropolis much earlier, and I realized that if I build a metropolis, everyone's going to come for me. And Alyssa was the one who built the first one, I think, and that's why people went quite heavy on trying to get to her. But she batted it off really well. Like
really
nobody really got close until that very end bit where I like nabbed the other one that she like. Nobody got close to the first one she built. Because she was just like swatting everyone away the whole time, and it was really impressive, actually.
Like fly.
Yeah, like fly, like literally. It was. I was very impressed, especially
you can watch
because
the replay of that. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say you can watch the replay of that over on the PAX Australia Twitch channel as well, or on YouTube.
Yeah, I was just going to say, especially because at the beginning, before we started playing, she seemed quite unsure about like what she had to do and stuff like that, and then she just stole it anyway, almost.
Right.
That's what I've been playing. And I like Cyclades, and
Cyclades is really good. It's
I want to buy it, and I want to. Also, I went sailing in the Cyclades before, so I've been there.
You're getting all the wins, aren't you?
Did you conquer someone's island or not?
No, but I conquered someone's heart.
Personal question.
Whoa!
No,
I want to read that bit.
Right, I'm done. The end.
Hi. I'm boring. I played more Bullet Heart. I had a whole week off. And I played two
Leonardo
games.
Of the group.
Did you say the Leonardo? What, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I mean, I did eat a lot of pizza. I played more Bullet Heart, which continues to be cool. We were dog sitting for my parents, and my wife and I played Bullet Heart a lot. I don't know whether to call it Bullet Heart or just Bullet, because they've announced an expansion that's called like Bullet, and then it's an orange emoji, which I assume is Bullet Orange.
Is it a peach?
This must be Bullet.
Are you sure it's not a peach?
No, it's orange because it's characters from Orange Juice, I think, the series.
Okay.
Bullet Peach.
If it was peach,
that's like the
saucy.
Not Safe for Work expansion for Bullet.
Matt, please refer to it by its God-given name. Come on. Don't disrespect
Bullet.
Bullet less than 3.
Bullet Heart.
Yeah.
Bullet.
Less than 3.
But yeah, it continues to be cool. Like it scratches the Puyo Puyo Tetris itch that I always have. It is the closest that a board game comes to that kind of puzzling. It's very good. We played the co-op boss mode rather than the competitive mode, and it's neat. You just turn over one of the heroines, because they're all heroines, and they become different bosses with unique decks. There's one of them that only has 3 cards in their deck. They're just built around the number 3. So every time they do 3 of something, or you do 3 of something, something happens, which is quite cool. And then there was someone else that just kind of squished us basically with their patterns because they were really hard to clear. Both times I got eliminated, and then I think my wife might have won both times just by herself, so clearly I was the liability.
Loli said, it's these women.
They'll get you.
The other thing I played is Crokinole. I managed to play Crokinole for the first time in a while.
No way.
Now, Colin, this is a Canadian game.
I don't know what this is. Please tell me what Crokinole is.
Oh, we're gonna about
Colin, you
to
are in
change
for a treat.
your life.
So Crokinole is a big wooden board that is circular. I think it dates from like the 1800s or something.
Okay.
It's basically just a big polished circle of wood. And it has pegs around the middle in a circle, and in the very center of the board is like a little hole. And you play Crokinole by flicking discs at the hole. And there are different rings which give you different points. So it's like 5, 10, 15, and then 20 for the middle, which is not called a Crokinole, but we scream Crokinole every time someone gets it.
A knoll, if you will.
A knoll, yes.
The knoll.
Take your pick of knolls, yeah. Um,
I prefer
and-
knoll field.
A knoll fielding. No, they're different types of knoll, though, aren't they?
They're very different types of knoll.
You don't want to know Gallagher.
And I think the thing that makes Crokinole so it's super simple. You can play either 1-on-1 or you can play in teams of 2 where you sit opposite and you shoot from your kind of quadrant. The thing that kind of makes it so magical is that to have your shot be legal, you have to hit an opponent's piece. You just have to at least touch it. So you're always aiming to try and knock your opponent's pieces out of the board. But because of the pegs, because of the hole, and because you have to knock pieces into each other, the whole board is constantly shifting. It's not like bowls where you just try and all get close to the center. It's like, okay, I'm going to slam your puck as hard as I can and send it flying. But then it's
So-
that snooker thing of your own puck goes flying off in a different direction.
So now that you've explained what this is, I have played it, but not. I've played a version where it was big. It was much bigger, and we were in the parking lot next to my parents' house when I was in high school, and someone just pulled up in the back of their pickup truck, and we played it in the parking lot.
That's
Which is the most Canadian sentence ever.
Extreme Crokinole.
Yeah, I didn't know that was what it was called. I was just like, no, the guy's like, here, I got some pegs and some things, and I was like, okay, great, we'll play
So
this.
according to Wikipedia, it's a disc-flicking dexterity board game, possibly of Canadian origin, but it's similar to games of Pitch Nut, Carom, Pishanut, with elements of shuffleboard and curling reduced to tabletop size. So there you
Of
go.
course.
Yeah, Karom is quite similar, but has, I think that's the one with pockets in the corners. But
Matt,
yeah, it's
I love the
Yes.
idea of you strolling onto a bowls green and just being like, right, you all
spitting on it and going, this isn't Crokinole.
You're lame sport. Let me show you something really radical. Get a crocodile board out.
The
But
future
it was
is
fun.
now, old man.
It was so it was because the social distancing guidelines in the UK relaxed a bit, so we saw some friends at distance and kind of played Crokinole in the middle of an open field. But it's fun to play because Crokinole
Crokinole
continues to be great.
is a 2-meter board matchup.
Yeah, but you don't have to be sat opposite at the same time, do you? You're not
No, that's
shooting
true, that's
simultaneously. So yeah, it's really good. Crokinole continues to be an all-timer. It's
Being
great.
cheeky, Wills. I'm watching you.
Always cheeky.
All right, but that is it for what we've been playing. So let's move on to news. This week's Hall of Headlines. We'll open with a quick kind of. It's more of just a bit of an interesting stat more than any kind of news headline.
Oh.
So Wingspan, which was released 2019, I think, like spring 2019. Elizabeth Hargrave's engine building game, I guess you could call it. You collect birds, you put them in your
Egg
environments.
building.
Yeah, you lay eggs. You basically
Right.
want a lot of birds. You want a lot of points. You want a lot of eggs. We've played it on the channel. You can go and check it out. It's now outsold Scythe from publisher Stonemaier by almost double.
Darn.
So Stonemaier put out what it calls its stakeholder report, which kind of runs through the lifetime sales of its games.
So how
So
many
Scythe came
stakes
out-
they can all buy with the
Yeah.
profits they've made from
Yeah.
board games?
No, it's
Yeah,
how many
they're
stakes
all
they can all
just-
physically hold.
But Wingspan has now sold, or to use specifically, units moved.
Oh, Matt,
It's
don't.
moved 746,991
Well, I can move 4,000 things.
by the end of last year, and Scythe is on 382,102. So it's about double. It's just under double. But considering Wingspan's only been out 2 years now, and that's about double what it was on last year. So it's almost doubled its units moved.
There's a lot
in
of
the
double,
space.
double.
Yeah.
trouble.
But I think it's one of those really interesting things where Scythe was a huge game when it came out. It's I think, become one of those kind of Gloomhaven style games where it's broken through to a mainstream audience. But clearly Wingspan has broken through even more. I think Elizabeth Hargrave was actually interviewed in like the New York Times and so on.
Oh,
I think the theme has helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's not stompy mechs in historical Europe. It's North American birds. It's like a very accessible, pleasant theme.
This is what happens when all board games aren't designed by the same 8 white men. Like it's like this is what happens when you actually get a diversity in the people designing games. Yeah,
and I think like Elizabeth Hargrave has kind of spoken a lot about the fact she's very keen ornithologist, and that comes through in those cards. They're kind of loosely realistic to the actual birds, so the number of eggs they lay and their actual wingspan is relatively, with a few tweaks I think for gameplay balance, they're relatively scientifically accurate. So yeah, I think it's just it's a bloody great game, but it's also just a sign of you take an interesting theme and stay true to it.
If you think about it, it's a lot more affordable than Scythe.
Yeah,
it's a lot smaller. The theme is a lot more accessible. The game itself is a lot more accessible. It doesn't surprise me that it's sold better than Scythe. Like Scythe is very much, even though it may have broken somewhat into the mainstream, it's very much a hobbyist game. Like there is a lot to take on. There is a lot to sort of get your head around. Whereas Wingspan, it's not like extremely light, but I've definitely put it on the lighter end of board games, and so it doesn't surprise me that more people have got it. And yeah, I do think the coverage has probably helped, but it is nice to see one of the prominent female identifying designers getting a recognition. I haven't heard many people talk about Mariposas, but I wonder whether that's just because like Wingspan was the big breakthrough, and now maybe Mariposas is like the second album.
I was about to say second album syndrome, isn't it? Yeah, it's difficult to make the follow up.
You need to consider as well, I suppose, when the games came out. I feel like Scythe coming out in 2016. I feel like 2016 might have been around like the start of like this golden era of board games, the kind of when board games kind of went up again, or like it was kind of early days as well. Whereas like people have been the hobby keeps growing and people are getting more and more involved, and like people's collections are just like ridiculous now. If you look at like board game Instagram, it's the shelfies are vast. So I feel like even the timing could have been part of that. But I think also like again the timing will have potentially influenced the way it was designed, the fact that it's like a lot more pleasing to the eye, and like a lot of those kind of bits it's probably all because of the time it came out as well.
But there we go, that's kind of it. There were a few other things mentioned. They're putting out I think 2 games this year, Stonemaier, but nothing super surprising. It's nothing super surprising. There's no kind of major big announcements. But yeah, Wingspan continues to be very popual.
Good.
Also, what a tabletop sentence. Adjusted like bird wingspan for balance, like only in tabletop.
Very true.
Speaking of good games, the American Tabletop Awards were announced, I think, last week or the week before. We wrote up a story on them. I believe Chase wrote this. And the big winner, which continues to be the story again and again at these kind of awards lately, is The Crew.
Hey.
The Quest for Planet 9, which I think won the Kenner Spiel des Jahres and won the Asdor, or the Expert Asdor at least. And has now picked up this and added that to its trophy shelf. That we like very much. It won in the casual games category.
Finally.
So,
goodness sake.
Yeah, which I think we've said before, we feel it's more of a kind of a game that
it's very approachable. People who aren't
immersed in heavy games could.
For context, Colin, this game has won so many advanced gamer awards. It's just kind of hot, but co-op.
So the American Tabletop Awards are quite interesting. They're generally, I think they're organised by kind of a group of industry figures and content creators and so on. They're relatively new. They've only been going a few years, but their categories are quite different to the things like the Spiel des Jahres. So like I say, Crew won in the casual games category. Abandon All Artichokes won in the early gamers category.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about this game. It's popped up very, very often. So now I am intrigued.
And Calico won in strategy games.
Oh.
And Road to Civilization is the complex game award winner, which I've not heard of. I don't know Road to Civilization, but I've heard of Calico because it's about cats. So
Yeah.
apparently it's very good, but I've not played it yet.
Yeah, that's another one that's popped up in various circles, and
Also-
I'm like, what is this?
Also one dominating board game Instagram, because people just love getting like a picture of their cat next to it. Or, I think did somebody make? Is that no? Never mind. Is that about quilt? Is there like a quilt in it or something? I don't know. It's got that kind of.
I think the
aesthetic,
cat
isn't
is
it?
sat on a quilt on the box art, so you might be right.
Okay.
I can't remember much more than that, but there we go. If you're interested in games that are picking up awards, there's a few more of them for you to go and check out. Moving on, Alex Meehan. You wrote this story about One More Multiverse, which I'm going to say is not a great title for what this is, but the premise sounds exciting.
Thank you so much for asking me to explain what this is on the podcast. This is One More Multiverse, which they describe as a platform, which is nice and vague. But essentially, you'll be able to use it to play and design RPGs online. And their big hook is that the interface is kind of inspired by video game RPGs. So it's going to be, the main aim is that it's going to be very accessible to use. So whether you're making a campaign for a particular RPG that will be supported on there, or whether you're making your own assets for RPGs, or even designing your own game system, apparently that will all be capable using One More Multiverse. And there'll also be things like safety tools to encourage inclusivity and make a welcoming environment. And there will also be a marketplace for people to sell their various assets or games, etc. on there. It doesn't explain exactly how copyright comes into this, which I'd be interested to hear about with this marketplace. They seem to be leaning more into rules light kind of RPGs. I think that seems to be a big push for them now.
Big fist bump.
So it might be the case that they're picking and choosing RPGs where the creators would be happy for people to kind of make stuff based on that and sell it. I believe there's also opportunities for people to just share stuff for free. It's in closed beta at the moment, but there's going to be a full release in Q3 of this year.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. It's kind of got like a Stardew Valley-esque look to it.
Yeah.
But I think the big question, like watching the trailer, it seemed kind of pretty slick, but it seemed like it was a step beyond something like Roll20, because it's not a hex grid or anything like that. It almost looks like direct movement.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my big question at the moment is like where does the tabletopiness of this come into it? Because they describe it as being for tabletop RPGs, but if you're moving directly on the screen, and I think at one point they're fighting a monster and there's a health bar and stuff like that, at what point are you doing things not on the screen?
Well, so like I think this is where, kind of like playing on Roll20 or something like that, like it's basically just like a visual of what's going on in your RPG, right? So if you've got like, say you're playing Curse of Strahd or whatever, you can just build out the castle, build out the creatures and stuff. Or if you're making your own like tabletop adventure, you can just here's the village, and it's like, oh, I need to shove an NPC in. You drag them from a box and put them on the ground, right? So I think it's still very much just like a virtual tabletop rather than being like a video game that has tabletop elements or thing. I'm kind of excited about this, to be honest. Like it reminds me of things like Dreams and even like going back to like Habbo Hotel, like like all that kind of like those. If you feel a little blast on the buzz for people there,
Wow.
but like those free online resources for people to just make spaces to exist in, I think is something that should be way more accessible than it is right now in the tabletop RPG space. I mean, Colin, you are the resident now RPG designer on the call. So what is your opinion on this?
I've been following it for a while. It's super interesting. It's going to be so difficult to cover the wide spectrum of RPGs that they might want to include, because it's so easy to like do fantasy or do sci-fi or do steampunk or whatever the sort of typical genres are. But you all and I know, looking at itch, that a lot of the games don't fall into, oh, it's a fantasy game. It's like, no, there's 4 other things going on here that are very weird and different. So I'm really interested to see how they kind of try to put as much into, approach these sort of more obscure and more weird genres that especially indie games like to fall into. But that said, I think the tools that they're showing off are really, really interesting, and I want to dig in at some point.
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to help with that is that like it because it's user content creation forward, right? It's like, yeah, if you don't want to make a fantasy RPG, there might not be the art there. But like most people now, especially with the amount of tools out there for like indie game devs and stuff, like you can make pixel art, like you can make your own creatures, you can make your own little tile sets and stuff relatively easy. You could probably lift them from like other like royalty free like asset packs and stuff that people have made for games and stuff like that. You could probably like go on like, I don't know, the Unity store and buy like a pack of cyberpunk stuff to make your cyberpunk game in. So I feel like if it is leaning towards that kind of, here is a tool where people can make things and just upload it, almost like, dare I say its name, Second Life, like it's that kind of thing of like, this is just a tool, and you make whatever the hell you want with it, and people will just collaborate and put new things out. I get what you're saying about the copyright though, me, and like there's a dangerous area of like, hey, I made this game. It's like, did you? So you're making money off of it.
I think I'm more worried about if publishers get involved. Not so much maybe people stealing other people's stuff. It's more like, someone rolls up and makes like something for a certain type of game, and I think it's a dodgy line to walk, because for example, whenever we're covering a supplement for D&D 5e, there's always that fine line I have to walk with. I've got to make sure I cover this in the correct way, because Wizards of the Coast haven't made this. This is someone else who has made this for D&D 5e. So you've got to word it in a very particular way. And they're a lot better than like video game publishers, for example, with jumping on, copy creators. Because I'm all for people. This is my personal view, not Dicebreaker. I'm all for people making whatever the hell they want for whatever it is. Because most publishers are either nice enough that they don't care, or they encourage it, like who makes Blades in the Dark?
John Harper.
Or they don't need to worry about someone else potentially profiting off their brand, like D&D,
Yeah,
so
I think
that's
as well,
the only
like,
thing I'd be worried about.
It's the RPG space as well, so like the whole point is to make your own content for it, right? So I think and especially like D&D are like Wizards of the Coast are the most well placed to be that kind of, and like swoop in and copyright claim things and whatever. But that every week you see a new game that's based on 5th edition. You've got like the Dungeon Masters Guild or something.
Well, they have the open source license, which allows people to create things effectively using the D&D system. And it's why you see miniatures, right? You see D&D compatible miniatures.
Exactly.
As long as they're not directly taking that artwork, which is a whole other question of copyright.
Yeah.
I think generally, like you say, it's one of the nice things about the tabletop space is people tend to be quite respectful, for the most part, of if they take a system, they say it's inspired by this or it's based on this, like they seek permission, like they use that system in a way that creates an entirely different game and different experience, but doesn't just claim to be the originator of it. Yeah. So I think in terms of this, it should be fine. I think it will just be, because it's pixel art, could you see people just putting in, I don't know, Mario or the Stardew Valley characters? Like, is Nintendo going to come stomping in? But
don't get
it's
Nintendo
like the same
involved.
with anything, right? Like, you can say the same about Tabletop Simulator, because there's Mario Monopoly on there, and
there's there's
a load of copyrighted art.
There's the Pokemon Wingspan mod, right, that we were talking about. Where it's like, what happens if Nintendo do get angry about it?
Yeah.
But I can see where you come from.
Once they got a scent in their nose, they're off.
Like bloodhounds in Nintendo.
Yeah.
They're slow to move, but they hit hard when they do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm intrigued by this. As someone that plays Theatre of the Mind and doesn't care much for things like Roll20 most of the time, this is one of the ones where I've looked at and been like, oh, I could actually see myself being interested in this style and this presentation.
Will's Uncle Mario's copyright truck.
Yes, man. I will say that, like, I think what's really cool about this is there's a lot of virtual tabletop things out right now, which makes sense because nobody can be around a tabletop right now. But most of the time when you do see things like this, especially the ones that have like polished assets, so there's that I keep forgetting the name of it every time I mention it, but there's like the super polished like fantasy RPG tabletop thing, which has like proper 3D dice and 3D miniatures moving around and like.
I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but like you get stuff like that where it is, yeah, that's cool if I'm playing D&D and you happen to have the creatures I want, sort of thing, where it's super limited. Whereas this feels a lot more open ended, like a lot more useful for people who, like Colin said, want to make weird stuff that isn't just in a bog standard genre, without the horrible jankiness of things like Roll20 and I think it's going to be really cool, and it's nice to see like a different perspective of the developers making it. Like it very much feels like people who are used to making like video game stuff making a tabletop thing, rather than kind of like shoving in like CSS knowledge, rather than actually making proper experiences, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, I'm interested in this. I'm really excited to give it a whack.
I think were you talking about Tailspire? Was that the one you were? Yes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Let me just Google it.
It comes out. Right. It comes, I think, out tomorrow actually in early access on Steam.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, Tailspire. Yeah. So looks absolutely incredible. Like really gorgeous visuals. But if you're not trying to play a fantasy RPG, like it's only so useful kind of thing. But yeah. So there you go. Very interesting stuff.
All right. Last one on the news docket for this week. Just wanting to give a quick kind of shout out to the Zenobia Award, which I think, me and you wrote up the story, it was announced last autumn and they've just released the shortlist.
Yeah. It was announced in November last year. And it's kind of mentorship program award, which is designed to kind of bring some different voices into the tabletop design space. So it's specifically intended to kind of support and promote a historical board game that's not necessarily created by a white, straight, usually academic, often part-time dabbler in spurious facial hair, is the quote here. So they've released a kind of summary of some of the games, I believe 46, that are being put forward towards the kind of judging stage that will happen later this year. And there's some really interesting ideas in there. So the concepts range like across the board in terms of time period, from like pre-1500s to today. And they cover a variety of issues from colonialism to queer issues and sort of culture, as well as, like rebellion and revolution. And they cover all sorts of different geographical areas as well, from sort of pre-colonial US to Hawaii to Asia, East Asia. So yeah, like there's some really interesting things going on in there, and the ideas will be developed till June 15th, by which time they'll need to present their designs to the panel of judges, and 3 designs will be selected, and the creators will receive $4,000 in cash prizes.
$40.
That's it.
$40, as well as support with sort of wrangling a deal with a publisher, a big publisher. Hopefully, there are some publishers involved in the award.
Sweet.
So that's what's going on. It's really exciting. You can go and view the entire sort of list all 46 games on the Zenobia Award website itself, if you're interested, and maybe root for your favourites.
And it's speaking of root, it's got a couple of big names attached. Are they mentors or are they just kind of support? There's Cole Worley and there's Jeff Engelstein.
Yeah, Cole Worley's involved. I think they're judges. I'm not sure whether they're involved in the mentorship. I believe the designers are receiving kind of feedback and some mentorship at the moment to kind of develop their designs. But I'm not sure how much that proceeds, like that continues onwards. Apparently the entire process will be completed by October 15th of this year.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it's like historical games they're definitely one of those genres that often have like a very Western perspective, right, on often non-Western issues and events.
Europe in the 1700s or whatever.
German trade routes.
German trade routes, Italian
trade routes,
trading in the Mediterranean,
Spanish trade routes,
or a very sort of Western perspective on colonialism, in the sense that we're just establishing our trade routes on this.
Colonialism.
Yep,
Classic.
Don't worry. It's totally fine. There you go. Yeah, no, it's exciting to see what's going to come out of this. And yeah, like I said, I would urge anyone to go and have a look at the kind of what concepts are there, because there's some really interesting stuff. And I'm like, I've never seen a board game even remotely like queer board games. They don't exist, or if they do, I've not seen any, because it's just not a subject that I've ever seen covered in
it's something that's been
board game.
Really cool to see in the RPG space that hasn't really been mirrored in board gaming, to be honest. It's there are a crap load of queer and marginalized creators making RPGs, but there's so much less of a barrier to making RPGs than there are to board games. So initiatives like this just sort of just break down some of those walls, and it's really, really, really exciting to see, because it means that we've got more people coming into the industry and making interesting stuff.
Sure. All right, let's move on to emails.
Email!
If you've got an email for the Dicebreaker podcast, you can reach us at podcast@dicebreaker.com.
Do it.
One day I'm going to sneak that in where you least expect
it. Just not near the email section, just randomly barking emails halfway through a news story.
No, it'll be in the email section. I'm not...
It's halfway through the email
I'm
section.
animal.
Not that chaotic.
Lolies, would you like to read this one from Gilberto, please?
Sure. Gilberto says, "Hello, Dicebreakers. I have a small group of friends who have no experience with any RPGs whatsoever, and we'd like to start with something simple. As I have a previous interest in GMing, I was wondering if you had any tips or system recommendations for a newbie GM and a group of 1 to 3 players. I figured 1-to-1 is harder on the GM than other setups, but I would really appreciate your thoughts. Anyway, thank you for making this whole year much more light and bearable, and for being such an amazing cast. Abrachos? I've tried. Abrachos? Does anybody know how to pronounce that?
Abrachos.
I physically can't see it because of my stupid Google Doc.
From Brazil, and sorry for my English. Your English was perfect, Gilberto.
Yeah. If anything, it's our
Sorry for our Portuguese. Colin, go quick! It's your time to sell yourself.
I'm gonna not sell myself at all. Just look at my stuff. I mentioned it at the top of the show, but otherwise, I recommend. I was like, oh no, I have other people I want to say. All My Exes Are Mech Suits by Anna Anthropy is really, really good 3-player RPG. Super rules light. Really good starting place. I also really like scrolling through my itch page. I also really, really like Princess with a Cursed Sword, also by Anna Anthropy. Oop, I'm shutting them out super much, but both are really, really good starting places. The X's and Mech Suits is a 3-player one specifically. It's super rules light, really, really easy to get into, really, really fun. It's You can have mechs without having 400 pages of Lancer. You can have it on like 2 pages. And then the Princess of the Cursed Sword is a solo journaling RPG with tarot cards as one of those systems. To tie that back to the earlier conversation,
I'll stick
and
them
it's
in
super
the link
good.
under the video.
Both are both I recommend.
Nice.
And my own.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, I'll shout out, because Boy Problems is Lasers and Feelings, right?
It is. It's Lasers and Feelings with a bunch of other stuff stacked on top of it precariously.
But I think like any Lasers and Feelings game, whether based on Lasers and Feelings or Lasers and Feelings itself, is a really good place to start as well. It's a really nice rules light system that can be applied as easily to Carly Rae Jepsen as it can be to sci-fi antics.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a nice place to start if you're looking for something that, because it's D6s, it's only really those 2 stats, Lasers and Feelings, or what is it? I feel bad that Boy Problems is swords and emotions. Right. Yes.
With
So it's
dots in the appropriate places. Very important.
It's I think that's one of those things where you don't have to juggle 17 different stats either as a player or as a GM. You don't have to worry too much about, does this fit into is this dexterity or is this perception? It's just one or the other. So if you're just trying to get into a nice flow of improvising and rolling dice and kind of bouncing off your friends, I think those games are all a good place to start as well.
I'll also do a quick shout out to because the storytelling stuff is probably it depends on. Sorry, I'm rambling now. It depends on how much of a beginner friendly thing is the thing that you're looking for. Like when you say beginner friendly, do you mean lighter than Dungeons and Dragons, or do you mean these people have never played a role playing game before?
He said it was first time GM.
First time GM. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it depends how comfortable you are with playing other RPGs. I think a lot of the time, being a GM is kind of it's the same step up no matter what system you play, almost, if you know the rules well. But stuff that's really good for GMs are things for example, Powered by the Apocalypse games are really set up to make the players have a lot more of a platform to sort of take over the story as well. Things like 10 Candles, where you only really grab control when something bad happens and things like that. So maybe look at stuff where you can share the load a little bit as well, which is also really helpful. But yeah.
Good dog.
Yeah, I feel like everything was said that needed to be said.
All the information has been delivered.
Obligatory quest mention, which always
there.
comes up in beginner RPGs. But again, use a D20. So if you're looking for something where you use a D20, but it's not D&D, it's a pretty good place to start.
Definitely
Dread, all that kind of stuff.
Fiasco.
Yeah, I like Dread.
Yeah. All right, excellent stuff. Wills, would you like to read this one from Matthew?
I would love to. I genuinely can't.
He can't read.
They are all just trailing off the
you can't
page.
see anything.
Google Docs is so broken for me at the moment. I don't know why.
Okay. Colin, actually, would you like to read this one from Matthew?
Sure. Similar to the recent articles about solo gaming, what are new types of games or activities you are all getting into during or because of the extended social distancing?
RPGs. I mean, I obviously I think, to be honest, most of the games I've been playing have been for Dicebreaker. I've played some games off camera, but I would say the vast majority of games that I've played in the last year through the pandemic have been Dicebreaker. And obviously we definitely got into a bit of a way that where we're doing a lot of RPGs because it's quite a simple thing to do like this, especially because we are theater of the mind players as well for the most part. It's quite an easy thing to do like this. I don't know if there's any types. I guess I've been sticking to lighter games because I don't really want to be like for TTS, for example, I don't really want to be fiddling around with lots of pieces because TTS is already fiddly, and then when you're adding a fiddly game into the mix, it's just fiddle. An extra double fiddle, and I'm not about that life. So
never double fiddle. That's what we always
never
say
double
here on
fiddle.
Dicebreaker.
Yeah, I'd rather just single fiddle. Thank you very much. No, so for me, I think I've just kept to lighter games. I've kind of re-explored some games that maybe previously I wasn't really keen on, because as well I've been playing with a lot of people who maybe aren't like super well versed in board games. So I've been like Machikoro, for example, I used to like actually dislike, and but I played it on TTS because I was teaching it to some people, and I was like, actually this is pretty good, and obviously we've covered it on the channel as well. But yeah, mostly I've just been playing light games, which to be honest is like mostly what I've been playing anyway before that, but I would have also played some deeper games, but I just haven't really touched that at all.
I've been
like,
in a similar place where like you're kind of limited to who you can play with, which is a much smaller pool now that you can't sort of just go out and meet random people. So I've basically, like, most of the games I've been playing has been with my partner, and she's super not into competitive stuff. So like if there's anything where it's very much like me versus her, she's just like, I'm not into this. So I've been playing loads of co-op games, like, or loads of like Euro stuff where it's sort of like not quite as, you know, direct competition and more just sort of like we're both playing at the same time. Which is not something that I necessarily leaned all that much towards. Like I really love co-op games, but like usually I would play them every now and again rather than like I'm gonna play 4 different co-op games, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've been really enjoying it, to be honest. It's been like a new avenue.
Nice. Colin, has anything been filling your lockdown time?
Well, for a good chunk of the lockdown, I was unemployed because I used to work in the music industry, and then Live Nation decided to lay off 3/4 of its staff, which was, I mean, that was fine. And now I work in the video game industry, so that works. That's great. I escaped. So for a while there, I played a lot of video games. My low point was I was playing World of Warcraft again. That was my low point.
That comes up.
I got into World of Warcraft.
I
I started
into Final
playing
Fantasy
it.
14.
Man,
Yeah.
you never got out of Final Fantasy.
There's no
Stop
escape.
pretending you weren't playing it from the womb.
And then I started playing Mahjong in Final Fantasy 14, so like 2 layers deep into...
Yeah.
You were double fiddling? Oh.
Never double fiddle.
Other than that, I've mostly been my partner's in bullet journaling. That's been her sort of thing. And she has gone from like, I'll make some notes, to like, she's like, look at my journal. I'm like, oh my god,
wow.
It's beautiful. I don't do that because I do all my things on my computer. That's where my design and creativity lives. So other than that, it's mostly been I fill my time with work. I've just been taking a lot of freelance contracts, and like work's been keeping me busy. So I'm boring. I do work.
Let's see with me. Games wise, so board games, I've been sort of catching up on a lot of those games that, you know, pop up with these are the games you'll have to play. So I've been using the fact that a lot of people are up for playing games online to, yeah, play some chunky things. Like obviously, let's bring it up. Scythe, Room, Terraforming Mars. I'm just having a regular group of people who want to play those kind of games. And they're the kind of games that the more you play them, the better you get at them and learn them. It's just an ideal scenario, and I don't think I'm ever going to really, if everything goes well, I'm ever really going to get into a situation where I'm doing that again. So I may never be as good at Root as I am now, and I'm not very good at it anyway.
I mean, with the games that you've been playing, like, it's almost like you've been using the pandemic to morph into some kind of 40-year-old man with a goatee, you know, like.
I can do it if I try.
The next step is pushing soldiers around on a battlefield with a little rake.
I've not been playing so many RPGs because I found it harder to get people together to play role-playing games online, because I do think it's significantly less enjoyable for a lot of people to do it online. I think people are much more willing to play role-playing games together, so that is something that I have been missing quite a lot of. Activities-wise, everyone already knows this, but I've been learning Japanese for almost a year now, and I've been enjoying it. It's fun. It's nice to feel like you've grown, I suppose, as a person. Other than that, some video games. I know I say we shouldn't talk about those on the podcast, but I also play those. Lots of horror games. So there you go, Matt Jarvis. What have you been doing? Other than Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, but board games were like, I think I'm similar to a few people in that at the start of the pandemic I played a lot of role-playing games with groups, and then as time wore on and everyone was just exhausted, they fell off a little bit. So like I still obviously really enjoy playing them, and we play them a lot for work, and we play them slightly more sporadically, but keeping it up on a weekly basis was quite a lot. Also, for a while, my wife and I were having kind of like a chess tournament where we were keeping a running tally because my wife is very good at chess because she was taught by her grandfather. So she actually knew moves and positions and stuff like that. And I was basically just scattering pieces around the board and going, "I hope that works."
Matt, you should absolutely play the fake chess RPG.
But yeah, we got really into chess. Like, chess is obviously great. And also we got into Go for a while. We started playing Go. And I got into Mahjong, yes. Both with cat people and not with cat people.
It's an optional
cat
mode.
people are superior.
Yeah. I mean, outside of board games, obviously I got into Final Fantasy 14, which is not something I saw coming, despite being a big old Final Fantasy fan.
You didn't see it coming?
Well, I've never gelled with MMOs, but
yeah,
various things happened in my life where suddenly spending hours with friends and just chatting in a virtual space was kind of what I needed at the time. So I've ended up putting about like 500, 600 hours into Final Fantasy 14 in under a year, which is quite a lot. At the moment, we're playing a lot of Sea of Thieves. My friends and I are now doing a weekly anime club where we watch anime together, which is also something I was doing already, but now we watch as a group. And we have a whole spreadsheet where we rank what we want to watch, and we rank the opening songs and the closing songs. We're currently on Cells at Work, and Cells at Work is great.
Yeah, this is a very good idea of into the life of Matt Jarvis.
I am a caricature of
I approve
myself.
of everything.
Colin and Matt, you need to just make friends after this and play Lance. That's what needs to happen.
Speaking of which, Neon Genesis Evangelion is on there. Most of the group has watched it, but there are a few people who haven't, and we're just trying to keep it slightly further down the list because that's quite a lot to go into.
It's a weird one to watch online with friends.
Are you going to do show or the movies?
Show to begin with, at least.
Okay.
We're just doing series for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Colin, it's adorable that you thought they just watched one.
But it's been really wholesome because there are people in the group who've watched a lot of anime. There are people who haven't watched much at all. And we're going for, we're just ranking stuff based on Wikipedia descriptions, basically, because most of us haven't heard of most of them. But you discover kind of hidden gems, and they're just, a lot of it's very wholesome. And the less wholesome stuff we don't watch. So yeah, Cells at Work is great. It just teaches you about biology, and all the infections arrive, and they're just like these big, massive anime monsters, and it then freezes and is like, this is influenza. Influenza infects the body in this way.
Whoa.
And then they destroy it using a very scientifically accurate method that is portrayed with like swords and big anime guns. It's good. Also has a great opening and ending theme.
Every time you get into depth talking about anime, I just watch Wheels just slowly
crumple into myself.
Look, someone should make a Cells at Work tabletop game where you play as the cells in the human body.
No, they should make an Osmosis Jones game. Come on.
That's a good idea.
Oh,
I'm taking notes again.
Come on, Colin, I'm relying on you.
All right, there we go. Wills, you still can't read anything, so Mian, would you like to read this one from Sam? Friend of the site, Sam.
I love how I'm the next choice after the Wills can't read anything.
Well, I'm going.
Well,
I'm
we
cycling around the
physically
group.
have to pick Mian, so
Yeah, sat at the back of the class. Sam, also known as Orangeful, writes, level 99 just shared a design your own bullet heart heroine blog post. If Dicebreaker was a bullet heart character, what would she look like, and what would her powers be?
Here we go.
Oh no,
Matt's been building up to this one.
This is the only reason he picked this question, is so that he
I feel
could
like we
just
have to
go
pick
off on one.
individually. let's pick individually for ourselves. So quickly, like, describe yourself as like a super powered. So in Bullet, they're saving the world from kind of
Like a
intergalactic
magical
threats.
girl. Is that the idea?
Yeah, basically. But they
Sailor
in
Moon
Bullet,
style.
there's someone that's like a baseball star, and they fire like flaming baseballs at enemies. There's one that's an origami master, and they just form like a massive crane, like paper crane, which is in the background, which is very good. There's one that's like a composer, like a music composer. So just kind of take an aspect of yourself and, you know, inflate it.
This is hard when we don't know
Yeah.
what we're working with.
I've never played the game.
Yeah.
I guess I would just sort of like shout opinions at people until they destroy.
Hot take, man.
I'm hot take man, which sounds like a Kojima character, to be honest.
It does sound like a Kojima character.
Hot take, man.
Big Chungus.
Don't reference that
What does
video.
a Big Chungus have to do with anything?
I think for me, it would, like, leaning on all my own stereotypes at this moment, it would probably like be on a train or something. Yeah, I'd be like a super powered Thomas the Tank Engine just crashing into. You know that bit in
With
Ant-Man
anxiety.
where the Thomas the Tank Engine is huge and crashes for a house? That's me.
You could be the Ringo from the original Thomas the Tank Engine, and you summon the trains.
Oh, that's
Like you're the
good,
little
yeah.
conductor.
I think mine would. I don't really know how this works, but I'm just gonna make one up. I'm gonna be like, you know, when in Power Rangers,
Yes.
Yep,
they all
definitely.
like. There's like the big machine that goes together. It's like is it all the
Megazord.
vehicles or something? Yeah, and then
Yeah,
they can
Megazord.
sit inside it and do that. I'm like the one that sits inside it, but it's Honey, my cat, just grows to be like 100 times or more than really massive, and I'm gonna sit inside her little. She's gonna have a papoose on. I'm gonna be in the papoose, and I'm gonna. That's mine.
That makes sense. That tracks.
Sounds good. For me, I think I don't know, because if we're just leaning into the stereotypes of our personalities, then I'm just imagining I'm like queen of like goobers, like little gremlin things, because we've discussed goobers on the podcast before, and they're just small sort of like creatures, and I'm a like lord of them. And then that I use them to fight. I like command them. I don't know, and they pop out of my pockets or something.
Yeah, imagine that all the Muppets were sorted into like categories, like animals and people and all that kind of thing. Mian likes the miscellaneous category.
yeah, all of them. They're in my pockets, and I'm wearing a big dress and a big poofy skirt. And then when they all fly out of my pockets, I don't know, I'm like, woo!
It's like the front of Never Forever, the Kate Bush album, but instead it's just miscellaneous Muppets.
Yeah, and I'm not lifting up my skirt and they're flying out. I felt like that would be a bit much.
If you lift up your skirt, there'd be big puffy bloomers, though, right?
Yes, there definitely would. Fake you wills.
No worries.
Imagine Princess Peach, but I don't know.
A gremlin.
Gremlins. Instead of toads.
I feel like the key adjective there is just sticky. Like, all of those goobers are just like, they just look like they're slightly sticky to the touch. Like
Like
goblins.
the things that you had as a kid where you throw them against the wall and then they like
Yeah,
pull it in.
exactly.
yes.
Yeah. And then they fall on the floor. Yeah, they just
Yeah.
get fluffy immediately.
Yeah.
What about you, Colin? Who's your
Oh.
bullet heart character?
I was thinking I'm obsessed with fonts. Like fonts are my like fonts are my one thing.
love
So
it.
either I would love to just be able to like summon fonts to use, like a Green Lantern type where I can just summon fonts to use and shape them into different objects, or like I can be like, my Helvetica sword that's just like made out of like Helvetica characters, and then I can italicize it to like make it a katana or something.
That's great, yeah. Just a massive upside down T.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh, that's really good, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So make it level 99.
There you go. Yeah, come on, level
Yeah.
9.
Make our game, please.
Thanks, Sam. Finally, Lolies, would you like to read this one from Roy?
Hello, DB team. I adopted a rambunctious orange cat friend this past December. I love him to bits, but he considers it a personal affront anytime I lay out a board game and he hunts bats around the pieces. Short of putting him in kitty jail, I live in a small apartment. How do you all deal with kitty chaos begetting your board games? Failing that, what do you think the most cat-resistant board game is? Best, Roy.
Yeah, I also am quite familiar with this problem.
How dare you take your attention away from him, Wales?
The worst thing is, like, you know when you're in the middle of a board game and you want to just sort of leave it set up and come back to it tomorrow? That is just not an option when you get cats, because you come back and they've sprinted all over when they get the zoomies.
What if you
and
built
the
that
cards are
in?
just half bent, flown all over the floor?
What if you built that in, though, as a rule? Like, wherever the cat adjusts, that's the way it is then for the next day. Like, oh, in Risk? Like, oh, well, my army's not there anymore.
They're on your territory now, so I guess they own that.
Yeah.
The cat decided.
Yeah.
Force of nature.
Yeah, my cat doesn't do that. My cat's really well behaved, so I got nothing to add to this.
But she's just like quite.
Honey
just never wants anything to do with anyone, right? So I remember meeting Honey and just being like, I just got the sense of like, oh no, Honey is not impressed.
This one.
Is Honey well behaved, or is she just really lazy? Because
she's well, the thing is, Honey doesn't go on table surfaces, so if I have a game set up, she won't go up there. She started jumping on this table because she's on a diet, so when it's dinner time, she jumps up on this table now to be like, come on. But other than that, she doesn't go on tables or like surfaces. And I to be honest, I kind of trained her to go up on this table as well, because I kept giving her treats when she came up. But yeah, other than that, she doesn't do that, so I have no problems, and I never have any problems with her, and she's the perfect cat, and you should all be jealous.
Well, thanks for the question, Roy. But
yeah, as for actual advice.
Yeah. It turns out the problem is that your cat isn't trained enough.
Yeah, you need to get a better cat.
My advice is to play. My advice is to just play RPGs. There you go. No bits and bobs.
What about you, Matt? What
Holly generally doesn't jump up on tables, or she only does it at night when she thinks we can't see her. Because like our electric hob beeps if you leave things on it, like if it feels pressure and it's not on. Wow. And sometimes in the middle of the night you'll just hear beep, 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 which is clearly the cat's, doesn't it?
Oh, Honey used to turn off the Xbox. She does do that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
or on.
Yeah. But
or on.
Holly, so normally with Holly, she really loves boxes. So if we're playing a board game, we'll just put the box lid to one side and she'll sit in that and fall asleep.
Aww.
So a lot of our boxes just have hair on the inside where she's slept in them. But generally, she'll just sit down and she'll snore. She's less fussed about running through things, causing chaos.
That might, I mean, if that works for your cat, Roy, maybe try that. That might be a little nicer.
Try the box lid.
Or if you put like catnip or something in the box lid or something like that, keep it distracted.
I'm now trying to think, like, out of the board game world, like, what is the most cat resistant? I'm thinking like games where you draw on the board rather than have like miniatures and stuff.
Yeah, but if they walk across it and stuff, they'll still wipe it off, right?
That's true. What is the most cat resistant board game?
Happy Salmon? You don't really
Battleship? You have to actually like think.
Oh, that's
plugged in.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah,
That's a really good
strong.
point.
Maybe like a card game.
Yeah, I guess.
Or
you still have stuff laid out on the card game, don't you?
do like Kerplunk and involve the cat. Like Kerplunk or what is the Jenga? And yeah, just, the cat's just a part of it. Yeah.
Jenga with a cat.
Yeah.
Jenga challenge mode sounds good.
Yeah.
It's a game where like it's quite funny if the cat jumps on stuff.
Can you imagine playing Dread with a Jenga tower and a cat, and you're just putting your characters' lives in the paws of a cat?
Instant
Agent
death.
of chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I unfortunately don't have any cats of my own, sad face. But my parents have 4 of them.
Oh my god.
That's a lot of cats.
And 2 of them are especially notorious for causing chaos and trouble, particularly if food is around. I've never known animals more desperate to get their chops on something, to the point where they can open cupboard doors and just like open packages and boxes and eat the food inside. So I imagine if as long as there's not food around, I don't think they tend to be that interested. But I do remember my mum being very upset one time when the cat kept sitting on her puzzle.
Oh, my cat does
Really
that.
like that
Honey
puzzle.
does do that. She does actually swish the puzzle pieces off the table and stuff like that. Yeah.
Your puzzle was a picture of her, to be fair. So maybe
She's just filling in the blanks. Yeah.
There is the thing that cats sit in loops, right? They sit in circles.
I left
which I
my
think is
Ring
also where they
Fit
like boxes. So.
on the sofa, and I came back, and she was inside the little
Squeezed
ring.
That's
it. Oh my
It was
goodness.
so
That's
cute. I have a
very
picture
sweet.
of her, and she's just like sat in the ring, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cute."
But you could try that, Roy. Is just make a circle with something and see if your cat sits in it.
Make
Or-
an
because they-
offering.
SpongeBob episode where they're trying to get away from sea bears or whatever.
Or put your
That's-
laptop on your lap, and then the cat will sit on your lap instead, because it'll want to sit on the laptop, right?
Mhm.
It's like a thing.
Yeah, warm things is also a good idea. Put
Yeah.
something warm down. And that's it on
Yeah, get your game box, stick a hot water
Stick
bottle
it in the
it.
microwave.
Stick it in the microwave. Stick it in the oven.
Or only put your opponent's game pieces in the microwave, and then the cat will only mess with them. There you go.
Sabotage.
There you
Perfect.
go.
All right. Well, I feel like that's the comprehensive guide to cats and board games.
That's
so
how I want
job done,
Cyclades,
everyone.
really.
We hope that helps.
Yeah. But that is almost all we've got time for on this week's Dicebreaker podcast. Before we leave you, Wheels and Lowlies, what's coming up on youtube.com/Dicebreaker?
Well, Matt, thank you for asking. So we just would have had that live stream that we were just talking about go out on the Wednesday, but also at the same time, we've got a You've Never Played Quacks with Alex Meehan. Oh my goodness. Because Meehan has never played Quacks, or, well, she has now, but
Yeah.
when the video starts and you're watching it, it'll be like me and has never played Quacks.
Yeah.
We would have also just yesterday, if you're watching this on the day it goes out, done a collab stream with Ox and EG to do some Ghostwriter, which is a brand new game from Resident, which is a party game about interpreting ghosts, which is very fun. Tomorrow we've got the next episode of our Arkham Horror Mother's Embrace Let's Play, because the comments were pretty universally in favor of us carrying on with the game that they thought was crap, which sounds like YouTube.
A lot
We
of
play it
comments
so
were
you
like,
don't have
"This
to."
sucks, but keep going."
And then on Sunday, I've got a new list coming out, and I genuinely can't believe it's taken us this long to do it, but Best Co-op Games is on the way on Sunday, so look out for that one as well as all kinds of stuff next week. But, you know, I've talked for a long time now, so Matt, what's coming up on the website?
You mean dicebreaker.com? Why, thanks, Wheels. We, of course, have daily news stories from Alex Meehan and Chase, our wonderful news writer. Meehan's mentioned her Betrayal list of the best, worst, and weirdest haunts. We've got a review of The Initiative, which is the new game from Corey Konechka, which is kind of like a blend of escape rooms and choose your own adventures and an actual board game, which sounds kind of cool.
Can I just say that Corey Konechka sounds like if Reiner Knizia was trying to pretend it wasn't him.
Yeah, I to be honest, I thought Matt just mispronounced it, and I was like,
No.
"Wow."
Hey, we said no more games from Knizia. No, I'm
No.
Corey Konechka.
Konechka. And we also have a piece coming out probably next week, so not up by the time you read this, from Emma Steer about the representation of disability in various board games and tabletop
Oh,
games,
amazing.
which is a really lovely piece. So look out for that. And also Niall wrote something that went up last week while I was off, but I'll give it a little plug here because it's really good. Chatting to various board game publishers about being environmentally friendly with board games, because obviously boxes full of plastic and cardboard and wood. You know, not necessarily the most eco-friendly of things, but there are publishers taking steps to make sure that they have as little an impact on the environment as possible. And of course, you can find us on...
And of course.
Sorry, I was just trying to
find
sort...
us on the podcast.
Oh boy, you can tell when it's time to end when you start. Let's not even get into it. But you can find us on Twitter at Join Dicebreaker. Find us at dicebreaker.com, youtube.com/Dicebreaker. We'll have much more coming up. Thank you, of course, to our very special guest, Colin Cummings, for joining us this
Thank
week.
you for having me. This was
Colin,
a
where can
blast.
people find you? What have you got coming up yourself?
Oh, yes, I'll do a quick pitch. I am at boyproblems.itch.io or boyproblems.ca. That's where all my stuff can be found. I have an expansion to Boy Problems coming out, Side B. It'll have 3 new heists, 2 new mechanics. The heists are Casey Musgraves themed and Taylor Swift themed, and one other mystery one as well. It'll have a whole overarching like trilogy plot. In addition to that, I'm reworking Blackheart, redoing the entire interior to make it look better because it looks like garbage. That's me saying that of my own work. In addition to that, I'm adding safety tools to all my games and updates very, very soon, built in so that players can use those. As well, I'm very on the beginnings of working on Warm Blood, the last of the Carly Rae Jepsen trilogy. It is inspired by Disco Elysium. It'll have players. It'll have players playing one detective collaboratively as different parts of his or her or their personality. Still working on the details, but that's what I got.
Excellent stuff.
Can
folks find you on Twitter at all, Colin? If you want to give your
certainly,
Twitter
yes. I think it's my name, Colin M. Cummings. I think. Quickly,
glad that you
know.
Yes,
Stalling.
Colin.
It's Colin M. Cummings. Couldn't remember if I put the M in there or not.
Excellent. We'll drop it in the description as well, so folks know where to find you. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been excellent to have you on.
This was so much fun. I used to do a podcast. I used to host a podcast, and I missed doing podcasts immensely. So this was amazing.
Well, you're welcome back on any time. I'm sure we'll find another reason to get you on and chat more about Carly Rae Jepsen, Mex, and Taylor Swift. Which, look, I'm
not writing it.
You can just leave. Just leave me and Colin here.
I'm not writing it.
But yeah, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Wheels, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Mian, for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex Lowleys.
Thank you. Don't forget, I won Cyclades.
I've been Matt Jarvis. Thank you for listening to the Dicebreaker podcast. We'll be back next Friday at the same time-ish. Normally it's 3 o'clock on a Friday, 3 p.m. BST. Yep. Time differences. Just never mention time. It's easier that way. But until then, everyone stay safe out there. Look after yourselves. And until we meet again, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.